Hello, guys. Today we will be talking about relations, functions, domain, and range from a graph. First and first, we need to know that the y-axis of a graph is the same thing as x equals 0, and the x-axis on the graph is the same thing as y equals 0. Now, you've got to understand that basic. Otherwise, you might struggle understanding this topic. So remember, y-axis is the same thing as x equals 0, and x-axis is the same thing as y equals 0. Now, coming to functions itself, remember we had talked about relations in the first part of this video. Please check on Maths Teacher Bytes video 1 on this topic. So relations is just your set of ordered pairs, like your coordinates, so your x and y in a bracket. Now, wanting to know if a relation, if any of this graph is a function, for example, you need to do what we call the vertical line test. If I draw a line across the graph, just like this vertical line we've got here, is the graph itself touching two parts of the vertical line? Yes, it is. Therefore, this is not a function. This graph is not a function. Yeah? Then, if you look at this bottom graph here, and we were to draw a vertical line down the graph, it's touching only one part of the graph. So because it's touching only one part, it's touching the vertical line at one point, then this is a function. Look at this one, a vertical line across. It doesn't have to be this vertical line. You can draw as many vertical lines as you want. You will clearly see that the graph itself touches your vertical line at 2 points. So this is not a function. So this here will be a function. As you can clearly see, the graph touches the vertical line at just 1 point here. So it is a function. This is a function. These three are not functions. Now, talking about domain, remember domain is the x values and the range is the y values, or the domain is the x input and the range is the y input values. So here you have your lowest value of your x is a -1, assuming that my graph has all the numbers equally spaced out. But because of the software I'm using, we probably would see that they might not all look well calibrated. But assuming the numbers are all equally spaced out on this graph, this is a 0 here, this will be a 1, and this will be a 2 and 3 and so on. So the lowest value here is a -1, and it goes on to infinity because of that arrow there. No matter what you try to plot, it just keeps going on and on for your pair. And then for the range, which is the input, the y values, the lowest value I have on my y-axis is a 0 here. And of course, if you look at the arrow, it's to infinity. And that's what you have as the domain and range of that graph. And remember, this is not a function because the graph touches the vertical line at 2 points. If you look at this graph here, the lowest value of your x-axis will be a -1. Remember I said assuming our numbers have all been equally spaced out on the graph. So this will be a -1 here. And because you've got a dotted line, yeah, you have 1, 2, 3. Your maximum x value will be a 3, and that's the domain. For the range, the minimum is a 0, and of course, the maximum is a 2. And it is included, and the 2 is included because it's a solid shade, shaded dot there, and you put a parenthesis because it's included. In this case, there's been a mistake here. This should be a parenthesis as well because the 0 is included. So you should have this sort of sign here, you know, and the infinity, of course, you cannot contain infinity, becomes a bracket. If we look at this third graph here, the maximum you can have is, if I have to go back to the other bits now, bear with me. So the maximum you can have here is a -2 for the x values, as you can clearly see. And of course, because it's a shaded dot here, you have a 3, and because it's shaded, it's a parenthesis is included. For the y values, the minimum is a -1, and the maximum is a +1. But it is not included because it's an empty circle, it's an empty dot. So you put a graph there because it's an empty dot. Now, coming to this one here, this domain here, there is no minimum x values, if you look at it very well. So it goes from a negative infinity to a positive infinity. No matter what you plot, it keeps going on and on. For the range, you have from a 0, and because of the arrow, of course, it goes to infinity. And that's why you have the domain and the range there. Then for this bit here, your minimum for the x value is from a -2 to a +2, and they are all contained because it's solid dotted dots there. So it has to be parentheses and not brackets because they are all contained within that interval. For the y-axis, you've got from a -2.5, pardon the software being used, assuming that's a 0, 1, 2, and 2.5, then -2.5 to a 0. That's what the y values would be. And they are all contained because of the solid dot. That's all there is to know about relations, functions, domain, range from a graph. However, if you have any question, please pop it in the comment section under this video. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification button so you can get updated on any new video we publish. Thank you very much. See you soon. See you next time.